Thank you for joining us today. My name is Dr. Tasha Smith-Tyus, and I serve as the Director of Career Services within Wofford's Career Center. And we're excited to have our four first-gen alumni panelists, Ms. Essence Buckman, Mr. Tristan Brank, Ms. Jennings Brackett-Aceta, and Ms. Cornisha Williams here with us today as we highlight the first-gen narrative through a discussion on the first-gen identity and its impact on college and professional experiences through their lens. You know, by definition, first-gen students are those whose parents, guardians have not earned a bachelor's degree. So these students are classified as being the first, which is also something that I wear proudly as well. First-gen students comprise a third of all college students nationwide and represent nearly 15% of Wofford's current student body. This important student group is not a monolith, as they are comprised of individuals from various backgrounds with unique experiences. So in today's discussion, it will allow us to learn more about the significance of being the first to go to college and provide insight for other fellow first-gen students as they navigate their own experiences and increase awareness among faculty, staff, administration, and others on campus in their efforts to support this aggregation. So to begin our session, I want to go through and introduce each panelist, who will then engage in a dialogue via a series of related questions. Once we've exhausted those questions, panelists will then be asked pre-submitted questions and those submitted that are in the chat, if time permits. So I want to take this time out to also thank the Offices of Student Success, Diversity and Inclusion, who've made this week's First Gen celebration events possible through their efforts and collaborative partnership. So now let me begin by introducing our panelists. Ms. Jennings Aceta is a 2020 Wofford alumni who earned her bachelor's degree in English and returned to her hometown of Rock Hill, South Carolina after graduation. Jennings began work as a special event venue assistant at the Ann Springs Close Greenway in Fort Mill, South Carolina. After COVID-19 drastically changed the course of the hospitality industry and her position was dissolved, Jennings began an internship at a graphic design and branding firm, W. Aceta Designs. She currently works as an assistant, researching and implementing social media strategy, as well as writing copy content for various clients of the firm. Though this experience is invaluable and will expand on what Jennings gained from her English degree, her intent is to return to the events industry one day as a venue owner. Welcomes Jennings. Essence Buckman, a Sumter, South Carolina native, is a 2018 Wofford graduate earning her degree in English and African American Studies. While at Wofford, Essence exercised her leadership skills and voice through mentoring and encouraging younger women of color to have a platform, and initiated change through successful efforts in rechartering Wofford women of color in 2016. And she also became instrumental in supporting various social justice initiatives on Wofford's campus. Essence earned her master's degree in higher education administration at Columbia College earlier this year, and currently serves as the career services coordinator at Spartanburg Methodist College. Essence is ultimately dedicated to furthering leadership, education, and practice regarding social justice advocacy. Welcome, Essence. Tristan Brank is a native of Spartanburg, South Carolina, who graduated from Wofford College in 2018, who majored in biology with a minor in finance. While at Wofford, Tristan served as one of the original ICANN Spartanburg Fellows who were responsible for creating the initial framework for the near-peer mentoring program operated by Wofford Center for Community-Based Learning, and was awarded the Henry Freeman Award for his service and leadership. Tristan currently is employed at American Credit Acceptance in the Spartan Financial Division as Senior Asset Acquisition Analyst. Tristan seeks to further develop his technical skills in order to transition into the field of IT. And in his downtime, Tristan enjoys working out at the gym, spending time outdoors, and perfecting his cooking skills. Welcome, Tristan. And our final panelist is Ms. Cornisha Williams. She is a native of Darlington, South Carolina, who graduated from Wofford in 2020 with a degree in business econ. While at Wofford, Cornisha maintained a vibrant reputation and participated in many organizations, including Residence Life, Campus Union, and Wofford Women of Color. As a first-generation scholar during her tenure at Wofford, Cornisha worked tirelessly to overcome unique challenges while also assisting other fellow first-gen scholars. Currently, Cornisha serves as a member of the 2020 Teach for America Corps, serving as a high school teacher in Greenville, Mississippi. So again, welcome and thank you to all of our panelists. So what we want to do is begin the conversation by asking you all to reflect on your years at Wofford. The transition to college can be difficult for all students, but for first-gen students, they often arrive to college with limited knowledge of the necessary processes and lingo, which can make the transition even more challenging. So will you describe for us the process of navigating your undergraduate experiences at Wofford as a first-gen student and any initial challenges that you face in getting assimilated to college life? And I want you to frame it within this question as well, which is that of, was being first-gen an identity that you were proud to claim?
I can speak on that a little bit. I'm trying to speak when I know my principal isn't going to come over the announcements and interrupt. So I would say going into college, I was proud to be a first gen, but it wasn't something that I would boast about. I would say, depending on the circle I was in, I was proud of it in a
Yeah.
way. Like at home, I was very proud because like it was a source of pride for my entire family for me to go to college, and especially a great college like Wofford. But when you come to Wofford, like one of the very first events as for students and their family is the legacy event. And so you
Mm,
have all these legacies like at Wofford, and it's kind of intimidating. Like, wow, all these people come from backgrounds where Wofford is really in their blood. And so, in a way, I was like, dang, like I kind of have to start that off for my family, but it was still a great source of pride for me. And then for the other questions, it's like assimilating to college was a little bit difficult because going into it, I didn't know what to expect. Um, I remember
mm,
my mom and I touring the campus together and both being surprised by the same things or being in awe of the same things because neither one of us knew what to expect. And so when I was transitioning into college and had those anxieties about, professors or about organizing, social work life balance and things of that nature, it was, yeah, I could vent to my mom, but she couldn't even really, relate to what I was going through. And so it was tough to have that transition, but the more you go throughout, the more you kind of find your groove and things of that nature. And then to kind of speak to the last question you asked, I feel like like specifically to Wofford providing support, I think there was support to get you acclimated to campus as far as like social life and things of that nature. But I remember the only time I was recognized as a first gen on Wofford's campus was when it was about Scholarship Monday, or like when it was first gen week. And then that really started when like y'all came to campus. Like before it wasn't as big of a deal. And so I don't think there was as big of a push to say like, hey, yeah, everybody's freaking out. But some people don't even have someone to call home to and kind of get advice. And so um let's put energy towards those groups of people. Um But then again, like with all the other things Wofford does, there's kind of a balance. But I would have loved to even known other, like Jennings. I would have loved to, when I sent the flyer to my friends, they were like, Jennings was a first gen, and it was like, oh my gosh. And I would have loved to even know that, have known that when I came into Wofford. So yeah.
And I definitely can kind of relate, but then maybe I could be wrong from my freshman experience. I don't really recall coming in 2014 and there being any specific recognition for first generation students. I really don't recall hearing about that until I think when Kernesha and Jennings, when your class came in. Beforehand, the only people I could really rely on were upperclassmen who provided that mentorship. Because again, my mom, my dad, I would never really talk to them about any obstacles I may have faced trying to get acclimated, because again, I really didn't feel like they would be able to answer any of my questions or know what to say. And again, I mean, I had an older brother who went off to Clemson, but never finished. So there was also a lot of pressure on me to, be successful. My parents are, looking at me to be that one in our immediate family to bring in a degree. Watching my mom attempt to go to school, but never finish because she had to help with my dad with bills and, raising me and my brothers. It was a lot of pressure. When I'm thinking about my senior year preparing, my guidance counselor in high school was not very helpful when it comes to terms of, thinking about FAFSA and things of that nature. I figured out my FAFSA on my own going into Wofford. I didn't really have that awareness that I could reach out to anybody in financial aid as an incoming student. My only interactions with admissions counselors, so I never really thought, I can ask them about those type of questions, and didn't have anyone to give me that advice to do so. So my mother would be at work and just send her and my dad's tax information to me, and I'm literally having to figure it out on my own. How do I do this FAFSA for the first time in my life? But it's something that, has, I guess, put a lot of resiliency in me, just having to learn how to do things on my own. But sometimes that is a downfall, because going into Wofford, knowing how I was, being an overachiever, I found myself in positions where, I have to figure it out on my own anyway. I don't really have specific support in those avenues. So I really had to get to a point of, I need to really utilize whatever support is there, whether it's through instructors or student support services on campus, because I just really have been used to knowing it all myself, having to figure out how to navigate through my experiences, just because I never really knew that I had anyone to turn to. But as far as, being proud of being first gen, it wasn't something that I talked about all the time. Similar to Kernesha, I would have moments, depending on the situation, where I would speak about it, just knowing it was a big deal. And it's something that I know that I had a lot to prove. It was definitely a lot of pressure. And I'm sure you all can agree that having that type of title or classification looming over your head is a lot of pressure, especially as you're trying to process and transition to get to, getting that bachelor's degree and making your family proud. So that pretty much encompassed my experience.
Yeah, I think I had a very similar thought process towards that. I was most certainly proud of it coming into Wofford. I was proud to tell my parents, my grandparents, I didn't go to church that somebody new wasn't saying, "Oh, congratulations for getting into college and for going. That's so great." So I think it's a different demographic that understands the gravity and the importance of this position. So I didn't talk about it a lot when I got to Wofford, because I felt like, not in a bad way, but other students just look at it like, okay, people go to college every day. It doesn't carry the same gravity with our generation or our age group. I think something I'm proud of. I think it just made it harder before college, not necessarily when I got there. My parents were helpless in that I don't know how to help you. I don't know how to fill out FAFSA. That was one of the biggest conversations in our household. I had to laugh when you said that, Essence, because I'm sitting there looking at tax documents for the first time in my life, thinking, how am I supposed to know the answer to this? How am I supposed to call Wofford, who just accepted me, who anticipates an intelligent student coming in, calling saying, I have no idea what any of this means. And that weighed heavily on my parents because they are my biggest cheerleaders and they wanted good things for me. But they struggled right alongside me. You know, they're at work 8 hours a day. They come home and they've got to get food on the table. They've got to get clothes clean. They've got to get my 2 little brothers to practice. So I think it weighed heavily on me to get to college myself and to be accepted and to figure out how to make financial aid work for me. Along with the understanding that I can only ask so much of my parents because I do have siblings that are very close in age to me who might want to go to college too, and they might not have the scholarship opportunities that I do. They might not have the grades that I do that qualify them for certain merit or financial based awards. So I think it weighed a lot more heavily before I got to campus. Once I was there and I kind of had the hard side of things settled, I felt like I fell in academically and socially much easier. Like Cornisha said, I think Wofford does a really great job, especially the first week that freshmen are there, trying to make them comfortable, trying to keep them busy so that they have something to do and someone to talk to, and people to be around to meet for the first time. So I think it was definitely before I got to college that made it harder. Once I was there, assimilation was pretty easy. And first gen, I don't think played a super big role in that for me specifically.
Yeah, in terms of everyone else, I agree a lot of the way. My experience navigating through this experience was like a roller coaster. It honestly took me a good year, I think, to get myself in the groove of being in college and understanding all the responsibilities that I'm taking on now as a young adult, being a first generation student, having no family that had ever been to college. And in terms of holding that title to much endearment, to me, that was a big chunk of my core coming into college. I can say that when I did introduce myself, I probably mentioned it every now and again, like, yeah, I'm first gen. This is my, like, you know, I'm the first one of my family coming here. I took it as like a sense of pride for myself, for coming from my background, because everyone has different backgrounds and everyone has something they're coming from that makes it hold a little bit special. From my background family to where I am now, to how my mother helped me push myself here. Like, I held it at the center of my core of who I was. I took a lot of pride in that. I loved being able to say, yeah, I'm first gen, I made it to college. I did all this work, I busted my butt, and here I am today. Navigating my experience, like I said, coming in, I worked, I think, anywhere from 4 to 5 days of the week, along with college. So it was starting to be, you know, having a job to help pay for school, and then also balancing my hours and this newfound education, where you actually had to start pushing yourself, because Wofford is a great school and it challenged you just to learn the education you're here to learn from. So I was really taken by having to dedicate myself to, first off, figuring out how I study, right? Finding out how I'm going to learn that I'm going 4 years to learn, to dedicate myself to this undergraduate, to getting in the groove of that. And then also balancing work with that. And then also balancing yourself and getting involved in the Wofford community. That was a hard for the first year, because I'm going to be honest, I didn't really go out my freshman year, which I think also limited my experience to an extent, because it's sometimes I even had people ask me, oh, you go to school here? Like, you're a student here? And I'm like, yeah, I just come to class in the day and I have to go work right after. And it was kind of challenging to get into your peer group. But the support I think Wofford offered, having those smaller classes, I think I chose this place because those one-on-ones were a lot easier to find my groove. I had some great first year classmates that I found in my major that really helped me learn. And I talk to these people every day still. My only thing I think with the support where I had an issue was, and I didn't really reflect on this until I really kind of got out of it. And I thought to myself, hey, I originally I was a biology major. And I had an advisor who was in biology, Dr. Goldie. I don't know if any of y'all knew her. She used to be here. She used to teach, and then I think she left and I went to another school. But she was my advisor. But once she left, my advisor had been given to, I think, the head of advisors in the English department. And being a biology major for me, that was, I didn't really think about it. It's like, hey, like I'm majoring in a different field. And yes, she is the head, but to me, it was kind of like, this is something I could use a little bit more support in, because I didn't really know what questions to ask. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I was kind of like blindsided because this is my first time here. I don't have family that tells me, hey, this is where you're going and what you're doing. So I guess a little bit of reflection is that, you know, first gen students always be able to like take a step out and look at what's going on to know like what you could do to try and help improve it. I guess like I could have, you know, probably asked, hey, can I get maybe someone in biology to advise me? Not that, like I said, she wasn't doing a great job. It was just that like someone in the field who knows more questions about field-specific questions that can answer it. That was something that I think back now, like that could have been beneficial, that I could be in my field now. But, you know, here I am majoring biology, but working in the finance industry. So one thing also is that you never know what you're going to do.
That's true. Thank you, each of you, for your responses. You began to allude to this a little bit regarding the support that to help you navigate your 4 years here at Wofford. Having, and you know, a part of that can be having a mentor or a femtor can be highly important throughout those various stages of life, and can be definitely critical for first gen students. So although establishing these connections, though they may not always be easy. So what are some suggestions that you would provide to students who may be a little intimidated with establishing these connections with faculty and staff on campus?
I think faculty and staff are a lot more willing to help than some people might think or might assume. I used to be terrified to go up and ask questions and talk to people unsolicited, just walk up and say, hey, I need help with XYZ. But I went on a tour very early because I knew it was going to take a little more navigating for me to figure out how to make Wofford work for my family. And I happened to run into Megan Tyler, as he's assistant director of admissions now, and she was phenomenal. I mean, she just took me under her wing from like the first second that I spoke to her. And I said, you know, I'm having technical difficulties with Common App. I don't know what information to report. I was wondering if you had any advice. And that led to an invitation to Scholars Day because she recognized that I had the qualifications to attend, that my guidance counselor knew absolutely nothing about. And if it hadn't been for her, I wouldn't be a first gen scholar. I wouldn't have been a bell ringer or been able to apply for the financial aid that I did, because she was so willing to go the extra mile to say, hey, you struggled in this area. I noticed these things. Let me be a help with that. So I think I know it's scary, and I know that it could be the first time in your life you're really having to fight these battles for yourself and figure out how to make it work for you. But just being upfront and not being afraid to reach out is very important. I know that I was very uncomfortable with telling professors in the beginning, like, I have things going on in my personal life that are really affecting my performance in this class, and I don't feel like I have someone to talk to about it. And for the first time, being able to say that to a professor, the point where I couldn't handle it if I didn't have someone to talk to, and then being able to turn even to the counseling services at the Career Center, just breaking down that barrier of I'm scared to tell you things, I'm scared to ask for help, will make the world of difference, in my opinion. And I do think that means finding the right person for you on campus. It might not be a professor, it might not be an administrative staff member. But once you find that person and you just take away the stress of, if I say something, what if I say something wrong? What if I ask the wrong question? It can make a great difference in your experience, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I would second that. It's all about really stepping outside of your comfort zone. And my experience may be a little different. You know, me being a student of color and all of my professors don't look like me. So then that intimidation factor could come up to where I don't really know who I could reach out to, who I could trust, that really would have my best interest in mind. But there's quite a few professors. One of the first ones that come to mind is Dr. Neighbors. He was one of the most supportive people on campus, not just, me being a part of the English department and taking his courses, but even supportive of, my entire development as a student, who I am holistically as a student. And I wouldn't be able to get to know professors and other staff members for those things if I, went with my perceptions of who I think they are, or make that assumption that they might not be able to support me in various ways. So it's really just all about stepping outside of your comfort zone, definitely being open-minded, because again, what I have learned in my experience at Wofford is that there are plenty of faculty, because people usually think, you have your staff who that's their job to really focus on student services, and that faculty aren't really invested in that. But just speaking from the faculty aspect, I've met a lot who have really shown me that they really do care about my progression as a student, and are even supportive for me after I have even graduated, being an alumna now. And again, you would never know that if you just did not decide, if you decided you didn't want to step outside of yourself. So definitely just, I would say, to be open-minded.
I can attest to that as well. I think stepping out of your comfort zone and being ready to have that conversation when you think you're not ready is really what pushes you. It kind of exposes you to that networking aspect that you need to learn, because when you get out in the real world, that's what it comes down to, is that who can you communicate with and who can you connect with to get you to do what you want to do. And so being able to step forth and ask that professor a question, because that's what they're here for. And in the end, your professors are here to help you learn. That's what you're paying to go to school here for. That's what you're paying to go to school. You're here to develop yourself. You're here to better yourself. And being optimistic and opening your mind and taking that step forward and saying, hey, I need help here. And having the background that we do, you don't have any other choice. You've got to open your mouth and you've got to say something, because if you don't, no one's going to hear you. And you're just going to be this lost puppy not knowing what to do. And so I attest that, stepping out of your comfort zone, and please just go for it, because you're going to be your only thing holding you back. Just go for it.
Yeah, I would echo what all of you said, just about making sure you step out of your comfort zone and talk to your professors. I think I am really extroverted, and so sometimes I minimize how intimidating it can be to go to your professors and to ask them questions. And I also forget to think about the fact that even if you're taking an elective and you really vibe with that professor, but you're only going to have them for that one semester, you may not want to spend time to form a relationship with them. But if they're a professor, like, they're going to have the same office the next semester, like, they will welcome you in. We all know our peers, we all know that a small percentage of students go to office hours diligently, and so professors are in their office, like, waiting to talk to students. And if you just stop by and begin forming a relationship with them, it doesn't have to just be based on your academic performance. Like, they genuinely do want to know how you're doing. But also, just outside of professors, there's so many other persons on Wofford's campus that care about how you're doing. um and I'm just thinking about all the events, that the social events that staff had to put on for students, like the Dean Hammetts and the Dr. Tashas, and Pops, and all of them. Like, they're putting on these events not to just see a stranger and give them candy. Like, they want to get to know you. They want to see how you're doing. They want to know that you're doing well on Wofford's campus, especially when you don't have many allies like myself. Like, I often felt like an outsider in the econ department in class of 2020. Like, two girls graduated from the department, one of them being black. Like, so, like, I needed those allies. outside of my professors who validated me because of my grades, but didn't know that I was freaking out about what was going on at home. And so you don't just want to reach out to those professors who you see every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. You also want to build relationships, like go to the career services even if you have no idea what you're doing, and say like, hey, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm good at math. Like, is there something interesting in that? Like, just have conversations about it, and form relationships so that you can say hello to these people. The more you talk to them, the less intimidating it is. So I would just say, even if you're super introverted, like send that introductory email, like, hi, like wanted to stop by the career center. Can I make an appointment? Everything is through appointments now at Wofford. But yeah, just make an appointment, say hello first, and see where that road takes you. Cause 9 times out of 10, it will be, it will turn out well. So yeah.
Very good advice from each of you. Thank you so much. You know, the 4 years at Wofford seem to whisk away in a blink of an eye, and as graduation peeks over the horizon, students are suddenly faced with yet another transition. The transition to graduate school, the transition to seeking employment, and maybe just taking some gap time, right? To just refocus. How did your first gen identity and experiences aid in this transition? And while you're thinking about that transition, were there any feelings of imposterism or self-doubt? And if so, how did you guys overcome that?
Wow. That like wow. Well, definitely after graduating, self-doubt had a lot of moments with that. And then thinking about being a first gen, when it comes to, I guess, that resiliency factor, and then always feeling like I have something to prove, those were the motivating factors that really pushed me through essentially what it's been like 2 years since I graduated. You know, when I graduated, I thought, you know, I went through these 4 years, I made it. Everything's going to be set from here as far as my career goals. And that process was definitely not as easy as I thought it would be, just because I had career changes, because I initially wanted to go into journalism and that changed. So trying to figure out what am I going to do next, having periods of being unemployed, because clearly I'm like, oh, I have my bachelor's degree, but nobody is like even looking at my resume. I guess I had this perception coming from Wofford and getting through that experience. And people would always tell a lot of people in my class this, and I'm sure maybe you guys have heard that as well. Like, oh, once you get a degree from Wofford, you know, everything's set. You know, your career is set. You're not really going to have that much trouble finding employment afterwards. And the process was definitely not easy at all. And I definitely was still in the process of finding myself. I had plenty of situations where I did want to give up. But again, just thinking about how my parents were so proud of me of being like the only person. And I was always the one who was really into the books and very ambitious whenever it came to education compared to my siblings. So I still felt that immense pressure, even after graduating, to still deliver as I go into the workforce, being an adult. And even though a lot of things were not going my way, I feel like I fell off the face of the earth probably around December following graduation, because I really needed to get myself together and really figure out where am I going, because I definitely had a lot of self-doubt because things are not happening the way I imagined them to, the way I intended them to go. And again, just thinking about being a first-gen student and how we really are very resilient, just thinking about our backgrounds and where we're coming from, that's what literally just pushed me to keep trying. Because even when I had moments where I was speaking negatively of myself and thinking that I'm not progressing, that little part of me still had that perseverance to keep going and to know that, yes, I have reached this milestone, but there's still more to do, and that, you know, challenges are still going to come to me after this experience. And maybe there were some things that I could have done different, during my college experience that, again, I did not have that knowledge of knowing to make those changes. But I really have no choice. If I want to see things change, if I want to see positivity in my life, then I have to keep being persistent and reaching forward to, reaching my goals. So I think first gen students, I think common thing we have about us is that our resiliency is what keeps us pushing forward.
Yeah. I want to go into that one. That question's deep. First off, yeah, resilience, first gen, I think for sure 100% one of and it was another question, the superpower, it's a later one, but I think we're very resilient. I think we're very headstrong because we know what we've done and we know where we came from. Along with that, being a first gen is also terrifying. You are starting it, right? You are the beginning of this legacy. So you don't have any guidance as to what this legacy starts with. Do you want to be an engineer? Do you want to be a doctor? Do you want to be a CEO of a company? Do you want a CFO? Where do you want to start this? What do you want to bring to the table, and where do you want to begin this for your family, for oncoming generations? We didn't have that guidance. So I didn't know what to do when I got to college. What do I want to do to make my family proud and to turn this life of what my family history is around and make it into something that everyone can be proud of and be like, yo, he did that. Tristan started that. Tristan is the one who to hype yourself up. And I did biology. I wanted to be a doctor. Things didn't work out. I ended up being behind on some classes. I just couldn't afford it. Didn't have the time to do it. And then that self-doubt got to me, and it made me start, I really want to commit to this. Do I want to do another 10 or 12 years of school? Do I pay for that? Can I afford it? Can I do it? And that got to me. It's a lot of pressure. Did I love biology? Yeah, of course. I loved it. It was a great subject. It was hard. Don't get me wrong. Many hours in Millikan, many overnighters. Many times I'm on the table, wondering, why am I doing this to myself? Because who knows? But I think where I'm going with this is that you still have the opportunity to make something, because you are also the one this is about. You are the first gen. And just because something doesn't work out doesn't mean you can't turn around and do something. Holding strong and being resilient through it gets you through it. Because when I graduated with a biology major, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know about internships. I was also trying to work and pay for my school. And internships don't really pay as much sometimes. So you're kind of like, how am I going to afford to go to school when I'm doing this internship for free? And on top of that, it's I don't really necessarily have the connections to know where there's internships. My family's not going to be Mom, what kind of internship do? With Dad, what should I do? They don't know. They didn't do it. And I guess it was on part of me, reaching out and doing that networking, where I kind of fell behind. But that's what's important about that, is being able to network, make those connections, and then ask those people, what you should be able to do. And so for me, I was looking at, jobs in my field where I majored in, and they wanted this experience. I'm like, how do I get this? So then the self-doubt really started eating me up. And after I graduated, I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know what I'm going to do. I majored in this, but I was doubting what I majored in. I was doubting what I did for myself. And it was hard, and it really beats you up. And so then finally, like you said, I think it was that Christmas for me, the same thing. I kind of just went gone for a second, got myself together, started reaching out to people. I minored in finance. So I started looking at finance positions, and I landed this job. And it's been great. I think I'm going to go into it more on the superpower, but like you said before, our resilience and not letting that self-doubt eat you away, and being proud of what you did is still something to be I still majored in a undergraduate degree with a bachelor's in science of biology and a minor in finance. And here I am today. Just don't let that eat away. Ask yourself every day, am I happy? Is what I can say to that. Don't let the doubt eat you.
Yeah. Just another layer of stress onto graduating, because you're in high school, you're doing great. You got into college, you're going to college, you're doing well in college, you're succeeding, you're staying there, everyone's proud of you. And then you graduate, and it's where do I go next? Here's my resume. But not that people are malicious and mean and unproud of you, but they don't really care that you were a first gen that did so well, other than what that speaks to in terms of your character and your work ethic. They want to know, do you have the experience? Do you have the skill? And do you have the work ethic to perform in this position that I could offer you? Is that worth me paying you your money? Um, and I think when I graduated, I did have this deep-seated, I went to a great school, I made fantastic grades, I was really involved, which added a lot to my resume. I have interim in my back pocket, and then I get in the job market, and it's like, that wasn't necessarily as helpful as I initially thought it would be. And then on top of that, I end up with this great job. It's in my dream field. It's a starting position. It doesn't pay much. I don't have a ton of hours a week, but it's experience. It's something to learn from, put on my resume, and I'm willing to work through that. I'm willing to do anything that's going to take me to the next level. And I was very proud of that position. It was so exciting to start. And then something like hits, and whether it's a pandemic or a recession or certain fields having cuts in their pay and whatever the world might throw at you, then you've got this extra level of, okay, now it's even harder to find a job. So I think it added to my stress post graduation in a way that I didn't think that it would, but it also made me 10 times as proud to say I have this to offer as a graduate of Wofford College, as a first generation graduate. But I think remembering that it's okay to fail. It's okay for you to have succeeded to this point and to struggle a little bit. I had to come to terms with a lot of people lost their job this year, and people who lost their job who have more experience than me, who have more on their resume, who have more to say for themselves in an experience category, they're going to start filling those positions with up again. And so understanding that struggle is okay, understanding that you might have to reroute in a different position or a different direction is okay. And coming to terms with that is hard for us, I think, because we are determined people. We do typically make things work for us because we don't have another choice but to do that. So I've had this huge revelation post-graduation that it's okay to struggle and it's okay to take whatever work is out there and to figure it out, because you're 20 something years old, you have your whole life to be a career and to learn what you don't love and what you do want to do and what you don't. So I think being first gen put a lot of pressure on me post-graduation that I didn't anticipate, but it's also taught me a lot about learn through failure and learn through struggle, and you will other for it.
I think that I agree with all of you that being a first gen is a huge amount of pressure. Also, just on the flip side of that, I will say that when I thought about, what options I had to post graduation, I felt a little bit of freedom because I didn't have to follow my dad, who was a doctor, and I don't have to be in the finance field with my mom, and like she's not already sending my resume to her friends in this field. So I had a little bit of freedom to kind of blaze my own path for, to start that legacy and to begin that legacy that Tristan was speaking of. But then with the resiliency, we are extremely resilient as first gens, but kind of, and it's not a bad thing, but we are very ambitious. And with that ambition, a lot of the pressure we feel is from ourselves. It's you looking in the mirror and saying, sis or sir, you are not where you're supposed to be right now. And it's like, who told you that? Like, who told you weren't where you were supposed to be at this moment? And who told you that this path was supposed to be perfect? And when did you write this 5-year plan? You know what I'm saying? And so yeah, and I mean, because we all know you're gonna mess up in the first 5 days. Like, that's it. And so it's kind of like we are extremely resilient, but we get in our head so much of like the pressure is on us to create this legacy. And so it has to be right. It has to be right. Like, people have to see that we're doing well. Like, when I call back home, I can't be like, yeah, I'm struggling and I hate this. Like, I have to have some type of good news, because even if my mom says it's okay that you're struggling, like, somebody in the house is like, dang, Kernisha has to make it. Like, Kernisha needs to make it. Like, Kernisha was the ticket. And so we do feel that ambition. And I think that's where the self-doubt comes in. Because I know, like, personally for me, like moving all the way across the country to the green fields of Mississippi has been very eye-opening, because it's like I am a first gen. I was extremely successful at Wofford. Like my resume, I had its pages, and so I did all of these things, and you come to a place where like the town is super closed-minded, and like people aren't necessarily like on your level of thinking, and you think to yourself, is this where I need to be, and is this going to get me to my next step, and is this going to help me accomplish my dreams and goals? But with that, we have to remember that, like, this is the first time around. Like, we are the ones making the mistakes, so the next generation doesn't have to. Like, we need to remember these moments of self-doubt, and the nights where we cry ourselves to sleep, and remember how we got through it, so that the generations after us don't have to endure those same trials. And so it is a hard path, but it's very beautiful. And I think that's how it's aid me through my transition from Wofford to just post grad life.
Okay. Thank you all
I
again.
think additionally, very, very
Uh-oh.
quickly, to students who may see this, who are first gens, who may come across this, don't also let that pressure that you put on yourself as a first gen make you feel poorly, that other people judge your decisions. When I went to a school like Wofford that people hold in high regard, and they say, oh, you got into Wofford, congratulations. And then you tell them you're majoring in English, and they tell you you're not going to go anywhere because you're not going to be in finance, or you're not going to be a doctor. Oh, you're English, but you're not going to be a lawyer. You don't have to feel bad for yourself, not for anybody else. And if you do that, that's okay, because guess what? You might be a business owner one day. You might decide your own path. You're going to structure that for yourself. You're not paying anybody else's bills. You don't have to answer to them about what you're doing. And that's my biggest regret, is letting people make me feel bad about the decisions I made as a student, when it's not about them, it's about me. And I did major in English, and I loved it. And I'm a freelance writer right now who, in the first month of working, has been extended 2 or 3 different olive branches based on the connections I made in that field. It's not what I want to do forever, but it's helping me. It's paying my bills, and I'm proud of it. So I think for students who hear this, who may be struggling with that, don't let people make you feel bad. What you're doing is awesome. And if you're succeeding in your matters.
Thank you for that advice, Jennings. I didn't mean to cut you off. That was good, y'all. All of you guys are really good. And you're right, your path is your path. That's what I try to preach to students all the time in career services as well. Researchers often reference first gen students as having first gen superpowers. That typically includes resiliency, resourcefulness, determination, the ability to adapt, etc. So what is one first gen superpower that you strongly identify with, and how are you able to leverage your power in your professional roles?
All right, guys, I'm gonna jump you on this one because I love this question. Like when I was reading through these questions, I love this one. So I think my favorite when it comes to this, and what I think my superpower is, if I had to pick one, would be the ability to adapt. I think that first generation college students, and this is from personal experience speaking to a lot of them, being in a mentorship program with them. I was part of Citizen Scholars Foundation here in Spartanburg, which bridges for the ICANN. One of the reasons I think I was also picked to help, delegate that work and help build that program is because the Citizen Scholar Foundation was a great thing that I was a part of, great foundation. But from most of those people I met, they always had a story. First generation students always have a story, and they come from so many backgrounds, from areas, and the ability to adapt, to change where they come from, and to make it through college, and to change who they are. If you ask anyone in that program, anyone at all, and then you ask about Tristan Brank, they'd probably be like, this kid was a knucklehead. He was a spaz. He was front. Like, I was the smallest kid, and being able to adapt and change and to grow and to become the man I am today was a part of that program, was just a part of, and that ability I think I found in myself was being able to just say, hey, this is uncomfortable, but you know what? I'm not going to let it get the better of me. I'm going to do better than that. I'm going to make myself into a better person and become the person I want to be and become the person in the mirror that I'm talking to myself. And like we talked about, putting that pressure on. No, Tristan, you're going to do what you need to do and you're going to do it right. And in building into my work, when I started my job, I was on a team of 3 people, and that's including me, my manager, and then there's 2 ends to my job, a front and a back end. The back end lady, very sweet lady, Crystal, I'll give her a name. 2 weeks into my job, my manager gets fired. First time job, right? Manager gets fired. I'm 2 weeks in. I've trained 2 weeks. I know pretty much the first end of this process, pricing, portfolios, blah, blah, blah. I'm not getting the details of this because it's a very interesting process and you're going to get lost along the way. Long story short, I get dropped in this position with 2 weeks of training. Continuity is cut pretty much in half because the manager leaves with all of his information in his head. It's not documented very well. And here I am with all in my head, at least half of it, to where I have to do this job on my own, having no guidance, no leadership, no teammates to do it, just me. And then I have other coworkers that are also helping me in the process, but no direct teammates in my department. Let me say that. Still have coworkers and I still have that team membership in the company itself. But to be able to adapt to that situation, being from a first time student into this new job role in this new corporate world where you just learn this material, and here I am today, promoted to senior asset acquisition analyst within 6 months when I started there. I mean, is definitely something I hold high regards in my ability to just be able to say, hey, if this is uncomfortable, like I said, I'm going to make it better and I'm going to make it into what I can do. Mm-hmm. That's if I had to pick one, the ability to adapt.
I would say also the ability to adapt, just from being, I think before this year, I probably would have said resiliency, but the entire pandemic and then being a first year teacher in a pandemic in a failing district has made me adapt literally every day. And so I would definitely say having the ability to adapt is my superpower, just because at post-grad life is adulting in general is trash. Okay, if anyone is watching this, adulting in general is trash, but post-grad life is very interesting because you meet a bunch of people with a bunch of different personalities. And since I moved to Mississippi, I've met a great deal of people who have a woe is me attitude and very much choose to settle every day. Instead of, taking charge of their circumstances and allowing things to happen to them, they just accept it and kind of let their life be molded or changed by it. And when I see that, I'm like, how can you just sit here when you know you can change it? And so even though life is tough right now and life is hard and things are constantly changing, I'm always like, okay, how can I make this better? Okay, here's an inefficiency. How can I change it? How can we adapt? How can I do this in a way that everybody can hop on board and everyone can do it and the whole department can benefit from it? And so I really think that, over the years I've been extremely resilient and things of that nature, but lately my ability to adapt has gotten me through a lot of moments post grad. So, yeah.
It's the ones who adapt or the ones who survive. If biology taught me anything,
Right.
adapt are the ones who survive.
No, I literally, yeah, this is so mean, but sometimes I look at people around me and I'm like, do you know that your existence negates Darwinism? And they're like, what? And I'm like, the way you live is kind of inferior and the weak are supposed to die off. So I very much believe that the people who adapt will survive.
Adapt to the situation at hand. And I think first generation students are very, very strong in that aspect.
I think adoption's been a huge theme this year for everybody, not just first gen students, but I think for us it weighs even more heavily because it tends to be something we've always done. And in the nature of us being a first, it's what we had to do at all to get where we are into college. But for me personally, I think post-graduation determination and retaining that has been mine. Staying in the mindset, I'm going to do this, it's going to get done, it's going to get better, I just have to continue to work. And like Kanisha said, I'm not going to give up, I'm not just going to let it be worse for myself. I think personally determination is mine, and I get that a lot from my parents, and watching them, change jobs or go through hard times and get through. And how are we going to make this happen for our kids and our family? And knowing that that's so important in the real world, because adult life is so much different than what I think any of us anticipated for it to be. So I think determination is mine personally, but I do very much feel a connection with what Tristan and in terms of resilience and adoption.
And I definitely agree as well. And my word would be resiliency. Just thinking about my experience, firstly, I feel very blessed to even have been offered a job in the midst of a pandemic, because I had my first job in higher ed. It was a temporary job. The crazy part is the contract was extended, and then Cobra 19, as my dad likes to call it, came in like a snake and just ruined all of that like mid-March. So I found myself, and I was also finishing up grad school during this time. That's where those regrets came in again. Am I wasting my time and money again trying to pursue my master's degree? And I might not even have a chance, because I would apply for jobs during the pandemic, and then they'll send an email back the next day saying, yeah, we've now decided to dissolve this position or put it on hold. So I was at the point where I really had those moments of self-doubt. But if I was not resilient, then I would not have the job that I do now. And, aside from career services, I'm also a success coach. So I am meeting weekly with students who have academic risks and really trying to encourage them to have perseverance, to keep pushing through. I try to explain to them my experience and really try to get them to understand that, yes, this experience is extremely hard. And I can't imagine what they are going through coming as a senior out of high school and starting off their college experience like this, because, none of us had to really, well, I know 2020 kind of felt that on the end of that. But as far as for our freshman years, we didn't have the experience that they have. And all like my personal experience really translates into my work and how I interact with the students, really encouraging them, just thinking of the faculty and staff that have done that for me whenever I've had to be resilient for a variety of different reasons through my 4 years. That's also something that I feel like is the way that I'm paying it forward. And I feel like I have a story to tell, and that if I didn't keep that determination, be adaptable, remain resilient, then I wouldn't be in the position that I am now. And I know more challenges are going to come in the workplace. And I'm a firm believer in, if you're working a job where you're not being challenged, you're not learning, you're not continuing to grow, then maybe you should reconsider where you are working, because those are the things that I feel like are really important to us as human beings in general. And again, resiliency is something that I don't think is just, for first gen, but something that everyone should have, but it's really not easy to have that perseverance. And again, just thinking about my entire experience, if I did not keep myself motivated, I don't know how I did. It just took a little bit in me when I was completely stretched up under the world to really keep pushing myself and to just remain focused on reaching the goals that I've set for myself. So yes, resiliency would be the top one that I would think about.
Going into real quick, how, we're talking about how everyone should have this, and it's important for anyone and everyone, not just first-gen students, to have this information. And I guess I just want to be clear, when I emphasize on being very proud about and taking pride in who you are as a first-gen student, and like we said earlier, you come into college and there's all these legacies around, and it's like you feel inadequate because they have something that you don't. And I guess when I emphasize this, I just want to be clear that I'm emphasizing this because when in doubt, and when you're looking yourself in the mirror and you don't know why you're here again, you can always go back to being like, I'm here to start something for my family and for myself, and to continue with that. But yes, in general, if you are a student, whoever's listening wise,
Right.
resiliency is important. Being has, in the end, back to the core values when you're in doubt, and hold on to those and don't let those go.
Thank you all for those responses. I think that, I know for the sake of time, I know we've gone over a little bit. I feel like a great point to end is that resiliency and knowing that each of you have a narrative to tell. So thank you again for joining us today and speaking truth through your narratives. Myself and the college wish you continued success in your professional and personal pursuits. I know we've gone over time and we don't have time right now for any questions, but I do want to take this opportunity out once again to make sure that I thank Dean Taifa Alexander, James Stoops, and Nadia Glover, and the entire ODI student staff. Thank you again for joining us, and everybody have a great rest of your day. And thank you again, panelists.
Thank you. It was a pleasure being here.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you.